Welcome to Value Through Vulnerability. This is a podcast dedicated to putting the human back into humanity. And today I'm very grateful to be introducing you to an awesome human in Renata Porter, who is a leadership coach. Hi there, Renata.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Not at all. Thank you for coming on. As we get going today, as I always like to do with all our guests, Renata, is if you could just give a couple of minutes lowdown. What's your background? What are you doing for work today? And what are you passionate about?
Sure. My background is incredibly varied. I've had, a tremendous amount of different careers, but for all the way from, being a road dog in sales to going up to being an international sales manager to going back down into ticket sales because I wanted to be in professional sports for the NBA, into project management and then leading various different departments in the IT world. And then my last job working for someone else was actually a director of an IT department. And then when I left there, I started my leadership consulting, directed at mainly middle management. I do a bit of management consulting, but I like my focus to be at hopefully developing great leaders.
That's amazing. And is that one of your passions around this middle management sphere?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to reach the middle managers because it's a weird position to be in. You're leading a team and then you're also having to um, understand how to actually lead upwards or actually, work within a team and have a manager over you. So sometimes it's a delicate balance of courage and knowing when to, keep your place.
Lovely. We'll come back to that. I'd love to
Okay.
touch on that topic around courage. Brilliant. What I'd like to ask, though, for our listeners as they get to know you a bit more is, I love that varied background, even sort of disrupting yourself to go into ticket sales. How
Yeah.
does all of that come from a Bachelor of Science in Education?
Um, I- uh, Listen, I started in sales as a family business and in my family business, and I just kind of, I started at the bottom and just worked my way up. And then when I decided to move on from that, I did a little bit on the side for myself, and then I really wanted to get into professional sports. I'm a big sports fan, so um, and it meant I had to kind of take a step backwards. So I was fortunate enough to have a well-supporting husband, so I was able to make that leap. And I'm glad that I did because it was a lot of fun. It was probably my most challenging and most fun jobs that I've had. And it also led me into getting my next job in project management with Microsoft. So it was just a great move all the way around, taking that leap.
Oh, awesome. So
Yeah.
just out of interest, what did you learn about yourself by taking that leap? And how does that inform maybe some of the work you do today?
Oh, I probably what everybody else would say, just that whole trusting myself that it'll work out. Like, why would you go from a really high paying commission role to and having, well embedded relationships that I could depend on that commission and moving to something that I knew nothing about to like hard traditional sales knocking on doors type atmosphere and trying to build a brand new network. So I learned that even at an older age in my late 30s, that it was okay to take that kind of leap of faith to go after an industry that I thought would be a tremendous amount of fun. So unfortunate for me, the owner moved the team, so it was very short-lived. But that's all right. Yeah.
But you got that experience. It's really
Yeah.
interesting because that courage for you to make that jump.
Mm.
And also, I find it really interesting. Maybe it's causal, maybe it isn't, but that courage piece you spoke about as well for a middle manager.
Yeah.
You were speaking to this courage to manage up, but also to sort of almost maintain your assertiveness as a leader. Do you mind
Yeah, absolutely.
speak a little bit about the work you do with these middle managers? What is it that really enthralls you with that role?
Well, I think a lot of times, when you're in middle management, whether you're new or not, you step into that role and you usually take on what you've what you think you're supposed to be as a manager, or what you've learned from just having a manager, what you think come across. Because I think a lot of the training programs within companies is more of that administrative and technical side of management. It has nothing to do with actually dealing with the people, and that's the real part of the job. And I think that's a big miss. So a lot of times I think that managers just really don't know what to do to kind of like blaze their own path, and they just kind of feel like that's what they're supposed to do because they're being watched by their own managers, you know. So it's kind of like, okay, how do I formulate what I want to do for my own team, and you know, how do I add value to my team instead of just ticking the boxes and doing all the little technical pieces. And it's just trying to figure that out and being brave enough to go, okay, this is the direction I want to go, and this is how I want to build my team, and this is how I want to support my team and add value to my team. People don't think that way when they're managers, and it's really odd to me. You know, if you can relate to the people, then you can, you know, they'll do anything for you. Connection means getting the, you know, they'll show up every day excited about their job, you know. And I think that's a lot of things that people miss. And just, I think really, if I were to sum it up, it's just trying to get people to make that mind shift to get out of the technical aspects of their management position and actually get into, you know, what can you do as a person to connect with the other person? And then in fact, every time you connect with each person, that means you've, you know, created a collective team that's all working in one direction. Sorry, that was probably a really long answer for, for that question.
Not at all. It's
Okay.
brilliant, actually. I really like what you're speaking to, that word connection,
Mm.
because it's not something we, you know, it's not something we're taught, is it? At school,
No,
workplace.
no. And I think people assume connection is just talking to or talking at is probably what more of it is, but you know, just kind of talking to people. And there's so much more to that. There's all kinds of depths in connection. You know, there's the really lighter side of things, and then there's, you know, obviously you have to have that communication aspect of it, but there's just so much more to it. And being able to have that connection just means things can happen so much more easier and quickly. And I think the biggest pushback I get is people feel like it takes too much time, and what they don't realize is once they put the effort into it, you know, their time gets less and less bogged down with the mundane, like having to like be on top of everybody, where they get to take care of themselves and you get to move on to, hey, how about actually doing the things you're supposed to be doing, like forward thinking and planning, and you know, instead of looking at your feet every day, how about looking ahead? You know? Mm,
It's so interesting that, though, because like it's so obvious that we
mm.
get time back by investing upfront in relationships and preventative conversations, etc. What is it that stops people actually doing that? Like, because we all know innately that to build those relationships, that collaboration, that
Yeah.
trust will give us better results, but people still seem to be quite scared to do that.
Well, I don't know. My personal opinion is I feel like it really boils down to feeling like they don't have the time. I think it
Mhm.
really boils down that they have so much on their plate. They're doing so many things. Now, do they ever stop to evaluate if they're doing the things they should be doing, and should half of those things be tossed? You know, are they wasting time? Um, so I think a lot of it comes down to really prioritizing and making that a point of difference for them, making sure that are that's their focus, that they actually do connect with their team. So that might mean they have to let go of other things that they spend a lot of time on that probably don't add a whole lot of value. And then there probably is the fear of, you know, that big myth understanding of if you get too close to your team, then you can't actually lead them, and it's hard for you to make decisions, or you can be manipulated. And you know, that's all bull. I caught myself. That's all bull. So it's, you know, I think when you're able to have that connection, it's so much easier to correct, you know, and it's so much easier to guide somebody through a difficult time than having to try to that be the first time you actually have a serious conversation with somebody, you know. But
Yes, it's really fascinating because, of course, you and I met via the fascinating Humans First
Yes.
conversation that we have every Friday. And it's really interesting that we come, you and I come from quite different spheres. We've both been in the sales sphere, but you're on the other side of the world. I'm over here
Hmm.
in the UK. Yet the commonality of the conversation around can we be more human to drive better outcomes, it seems to be getting louder and louder. Do you not think, Renata?
I think it is. I think it is getting louder and louder, but what I would like to see more is more examples of how to walk the walk,
Mhm.
Not dictatorial that you have to do this, that, and the other, but like people need examples. They need, I don't want to say frameworks, but they need to hear people go, hey, listen, I tried this and I bombed. But that might actually work for somebody else, and I think I'm really excited that more and more people are speaking up about trying to connect with each other and looking at each other as humans instead of cogs, in a wheel. And I think that's amazing, and it's a great conversation. I just would love people to share more of their experiences, and so we can all learn from each other. Like you said, we're on, two different sides of the planet, and at one, for last 10 years before I came back home, I was in New Zealand. It's the same all over. I think people truly, really want to enjoy the place that they spend more time at more than their family. I think people really would love to love their work. And I really don't think that's a big jump in my, mind. How hard is it? All it is just liking the people that you're working with, and you can't like the people that you're working with and like your job if you can't have a 2-minute conversation with them about anything. It could be something simple, it could be something serious. So that all comes back to that connection.
It's so fascinating because if we think about there's examples, whether it's macroeconomic basis or organizations, this just isn't a boardroom conversation. People aren't.
Mm-mm.
We're still quiet. I find anyway. Not sure about your network, Renata,
Mhm.
but there's still far too much focus on metrics and not enough on actually what do we do as a team, and on that, how do we use that connection on a human level to
Yeah,
drive better outcomes, or to make those metrics better, or to improve a process. It's almost like technology and processes leading humans rather than the other way around for me.
absolutely. I think sometimes that's, first of all, that's why my focus is on middle management, because I'm hoping to catch them on their way up, right? So when they get up into the boardroom, it's just common everyday language for them, and then we're really changing the course. But I also sometimes I wonder if companies, um, if they even want leaders. You look at job positions now, and especially in the IT sphere, for middle management, if you're looking for an engineer, they're looking for all the specific certifications for the actual team lead or the lead of that team. Now, I understand why they need to have some of the technical knowledge, but the main part of their job is to lead. So if you're only going to be hiring doers and just hope that they can do the little administrative pieces, well, then you're weeding out the leaders. How are they ever going to learn how to really motivate and challenge a team so they become innovative and the team just keeps escalating and improving and having, you know, a lot of great successes if all you're doing is expecting your leader to tick boxes. I think businesses or companies just kind of weed it out now. Like you said, they're getting into that processes, or, they're it's more dependent on technology instead of the people.
Yes, it's really interesting. There's an organization I know over here in
Mm,
Europe, and they're running 7 concurrent IT projects. There are people going off work with stress. There's people leaving the organization because people aren't thinking, actually, what's the impact of all of
absolutely.
this technological digitalization, inverted commas? Like literally, it's like carnage that
Mm,
people in this organization. I'm just wondering, at what point does someone think the impact of all of these projects could actually damage our humans?
yeah.
There's only one example, but I don't think it's uncommon.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, we went through that when I was hired at my last company. They were had just signed off on all of these transformation projects, and we had to deliver. And this is a small company, and we had to deliver 4 within 1 year. Not even understanding that the company themselves were getting ready to go through a whole restructure. And twice I tried to speak up about, maybe we should put one of these on hold. Maybe we should, at the beginning, and they just, because they were already signed off before I came on board, but, they're just, people get in that mindset of, no, we got to use that budget this year. We've invested this year. No, we've already signed off. We're already doing it. And they just won't hold back and won't even look at the impact of their people, or, you know, and I just think, okay, put the money aside, think about your people, push it through next year so you can have success this year and even greater success next year, instead of crashing and burning this year and figuring out how you're going to recover next year's. Again, it all comes, it feels like it's common sense, but I don't know who was it that said common sense doesn't always equal common practice. So
it's a great phrase. It's really fascinating, because I'm sort of sensing with the work you're doing with these middle and upcoming managers or leaders, is that's quite a challenge, isn't it? If you've got a sort of a board or a senior leadership team that have signed off, and you're in the middle of that sandwich, that's a real challenge, isn't it, to manage?
It is. I had to actually do that for myself in my last role, because I was caught up in the mess of my senior leadership team, and it was really affecting me. I feel like I was not being the best person I could be. I was, I got caught up in the drama. Let's just put it that way, okay? But I had to go home one weekend and go, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I've just got to focus on my team. And Tim Story has a great quote about working your land and planting your seeds and watering them, and water means repetition, right? So, and that's essentially, I think what I'd like to try to get across to these middle managers is that, focus on what you feel like your values are for your team, and then work with your team on the behaviors that are going to bring those values out, so you guys can become a collective. Focus on your team, work that land, and then, don't worry about when you have to muster up the courage to say, no, I'm going to do something different. I think this is the direction my team should be going. No, I don't like to treat my team that way. Yes, I do spend lunch with my team, and it is okay if I have a great conversation with them, So I think if I'm trying to make an impact where I can get the middle managers to actually focus on themselves and the teams that they want and the excellence they want at the other end, then it kind of silences all the noise above, and then it kind of releases all the pressure as far as, are you doing things right? Well, according to who? According to you or according to somebody else? So I'm hoping that that's helpful, and that's, that they learn lessons as far as how to actually work with people, so when they move up the ladder, that they just bring all that knowledge with them. Because I think a lot of your senior management, they really have to get in that forward thinking leadership perspective, and they have no clue how to collaborate. They have no clue how to depend on their team to innovate. They've never learned how to do those tasks. So I'm hoping that we can get them in the middle level, and they're good to go in another few years.
Oh, that's awesome. I really like what you spoke to there, actually, around you can actually build, or you're focusing on helping that unit, that middle management team and their little tribe, can be within a big corporation, but they can still create their own culture based on values, such that they can take that forward. I think that's a really insightful comment there.
Yeah, and I, listen, I used to talk about it when I was first doing it, when I was reshaping, because I would get these comments of, hey, your team seem really happy and things are going well. But as soon as I start talking about the things I'm doing, you get the eye rolls and the, oh, okay, and they lose interest. And because to them, it means they have to invest in their team. And I don't have the time for that. I've got 50 meetings a day. And it's like, okay, well, it's your choice, your priorities, So, so I learned to just keep my mouth shut and just keep doing what I was doing with my team. It was working with my team, and I think because of sales, I've always had those relationship. I've always been in the people business, right? I think I was actually just watching your, oh, sorry, I forgot the name of your sessions, but the last one that you had with the lady from VaynerMedia.
With Claude.
Claude, that's right. And she was saying, well, we're all in the people business. And I'm thinking, yeah, I've always been in the people business. And I think once you learn how to build those relationships and once you develop them, you only get stronger and stronger, and you learn how to deal with, a myriad of different people. And there's, almost no situation that you can't handle, the more you build those relationship skills and those connection skills, there's almost nothing that you can't handle when somebody comes to you with what they feel is, the biggest problem of the world. You're like, okay, I've got some experience here, and here, this is how we're going to work through it.
That's lovely. If thinking back to what you just said, I think it's a really interesting comment where you said these other leaders were like, hey, why is your team working so well, so effectively? What were one or two things for our listeners that you worked on intentionally to make sure that your team was connected and worked well as a team? Were there a couple of practices that you introduced yourself, or?
I think in my last probably 3 teams that I worked with, I have to say the biggest thing that I had to really, really push was for them to work with each other. You know, um, I when I work onto a new team, so you can tell the environment. Whereas like they either have some type of relationship or they have no relationship. My last job, they were really kind and lovely to each other, but they would never lift their head to ask the person sitting across from them what they thought. How could they solve this problem? How could they help? Right. So I think even in my last 3 roles, that's been the biggest thing. It's like, hey, you've got experts sitting right next to you. Bounce the idea off of them. Even if they do a different role than you, they might have an opinion. They may have worked with that customer, or they may see things differently. So I think the biggest thing is to get them to talk and communicate with each other. And sometimes it can be brutal for a new leader, or even an experienced leader like me, just trying to drag them into talking to each other and like, hey, don't you have an opinion about that? Trying to like force and pulling them and prodding them to like talk to each other. But once they get over it, sometimes you can't get them to shut up. But it's kind of that. But that's what you want, right? Because you want them to work with each other and solve problems with each other. So you as a leader or the manager of that team don't have to be in the middle of every little thing. So I think that's the biggest thing that I worked on that I think showed the most improvement. And also like being, you talk about being vulnerable. A lot of times I'm probably a little bit more open than I should be as a leader. I probably admit that I don't know as much as I do, as I should, probably more than I should. But I think another thing is to approach them with them understanding that, hey, I've got my job, you've got your job. I know the, I know the higher level of what you're doing, and I don't need to know the ins and outs of every little programming step you take. Sorry, if you want me to know that, there's no way that I can actually do my job. So I think being, I don't know, down to earth and just approachable, and being able to say that, I don't know everything, I think also helps.
I think that's so powerful what you spoke to. We had Gary Ridge from WD-40 on the podcast back in episode 50, Renata, and he spoke about that very comment. So the 3 words that he learned that transformed his career was, I don't know.
Yeah.
Ability to say that and communicate it. And I think that really came up for me as you explained about people speaking to each other. Because if you think about the education system, the world of work, we've been brought up on perfection, on top grades, on, basically being the best. And it's really interesting to go and say all of a sudden, I don't know, is counter to everything we've been taught, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think it's what you follow up to, I don't know, right? Because you can always say, I think a lot of times now, most managers or leaders won't admit that they don't know, okay? But even if they do, they just leave it at that. And I think that's even more damaging. I think what you follow that statement up with is even, I don't know, but let's work it out and figure it out together. I don't know, but let me go find out and I'll come back to you. I don't know, this is complete new territory. Maybe we need to bring an expert in. I think it's what you follow that statement up with is what builds that trust in that relationship with your team.
Cracking point. I love that so much, and it speaks to me personally so much what you're describing, because within my own work organization, we actually ran an experiment for 3 years. We're very much in line with what you're talking about, where we developed our own value set, our own culture, and it completely outperformed the rest of the business because we went from more fear-based to more freedom-based in our design. and now the bigger part of the business is now interested to see it. And I think sometimes it takes a leader, a middle manager, to go, no, there is a better way. And it takes courage to do that, but I think
Absolutely.
how it can be spectacular, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And being okay with the fact that, hey, you were heading down a path and realize that's not the right path. It's okay. Then just go the other direction. Or, when you start down that path, don't think that you have to know everything, that things might just shift and change, or you might learn new things. So yeah, absolutely. Being able to stand up and forge your direction and feel like that you're setting on a values and behavior system, I think is just huge, you know. And it just gets gobbled up by your team. Once they see that it's not just talk and woo-woo, and that you're actually putting things into practice, and that, people want it. Like I said, they want to show up to work enjoying their work. I mean, they're there with their person sitting next to them more than they're sitting with their wife or their husband or their children, you
Such an
know.
important point. Such an important point. What are you working on at the moment, or what's inspiring you the most around the work that you're doing at the moment? Are you seeing any sort of new trends? Is there any sort of organisation you work with that's really firing you up at the moment?
Well, I'm getting ready to work with a group that I didn't think that I would ever work with, and that's in the nonprofit sector, and it's with a U.S. swim team
Oh wow!
in Virginia. It's a team in Virginia, and it's a contact that I have because I grew up as a swimmer and went to university on swimming scholarships. And it's really interesting because they're trying to get out of that mindset of a head coach, and a head coach dictates everything. And then, when you have a massive team with a lot of coaches and everything depends on one person, it's really hard to disseminate that information out. So they're trying to make that mind shift to collaborating a little bit more, putting a bit more structure in place. So everything, like the head coach sets the tone, but the rest of the coaches or the leadership coaches actually step up and help and support. And I think it's going to be, I'm excited. I'm leaving in 2 weeks to go out there. So it'll be very different for me. I was a president of a charity in New Zealand. This is not a charity, it's nonprofit, but it's it's still in that realm, in that atmosphere, that they're going, listen, yes, no, we're not corporate America, but there's some things that we can do here, that if we actually invest in our coaches, the output of that is the investment. It's reflected in the swimmers, instead of everybody just trying to do their own thing and focus on the swimmers. So it's a mind shift as far as the world of coaching is concerned. So I'm excited about that.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So exciting. It's something. It leads actually quite nicely into something. I really enjoy some of your articles, Renata, and there's one you did quite recently around performance development versus performance management. How
Mm,
do you want to speak a little bit about that? Because I think it's very relevant to this middle management focus that you have, and maybe even to the work you're going to do with the swim team.
right. Actually, I am doing a bit of that. I'm putting that kind of in place, which I would, unless you're maybe in professional sports, coaches have never seen a performance development plan. So um, I think, performance development time of year, I don't know. For me, in the last 10 years in New Zealand, performance development time of year was a dreaded time of year. Everybody hated it. Even the people who, just an employee wasn't managing anybody, they hated it because they felt like they had to fill out all these documents, had to fill out all these forms, and it just didn't mean anything. It wasn't followed up on. you know, you never have money to help me get the courses that I need, or, the project gets canceled. So, what does that do to my development plan? And I think there's a lot of training that needs to go into actually doing quality development and making sure that the development plan is really based around the individual. I mean, it has to be right for the company, obviously, but I think far too often we try to group people into these boxes and think about everything from a formal training perspective, and there's so much more than that. And I think we should push back on people to, hey, the knowledge that you gain and you grow, you take with you. So you need to be part of the development process. And just because I can't pay $3,000 for you to go to a conference, that doesn't mean that you can't learn from a mentor. Let me help you find somebody. That doesn't mean that you can't go take a workshop, or that you can't learn from podcasts or books, or I mean, heck, all these universities have all these free courses online. There's so many opportunities for people to learn and build themselves. And I think people look at development as a, well, it's my company's responsibility to help me grow, instead of the individual thinking that it's, hey, it's your responsibility to grow. You get to take that knowledge with you. They should be helping you, but it's your responsibility. And I think when people make the shift of taking ownership of their development, the management is really, how much management do you need? Right now we need more performance management than we pay attention to development. Well, if they'd flip it, then we wouldn't need to have all those hard, serious conversations, and I just think it would just remove all that. So would communication and connection, but I think if there's a good blend of it, then it works. But I think right now in our society, it's, again, I feel like people don't have the time, or we don't know how to do it right, so let's just put it off to the side. And if they just focused a little bit more on development, then the management side would be so easy.
Yes, I think that's such a powerful statement. Something I've learned about. I've known about this, Renata, for a while, but I've not been able to put words against it. And I'm hearing more and more about energy management over time management. Because we've all got the same amount of time, but are we doing the things that give us energy? Or are we aware of the tasks that we do that take energy away from us and the ones that enrich us? Are we mindful of that? And I think it's a really interesting shift, I think, towards actually how do we manage energy rather than just time.
Yeah, I think people spend, especially managers, they get bogged down on activities, and I wish I could think of one right on top of my head, but I'm sure every manager has a set of activities that they do every week that they feel like they have to do every week and allot time to every week. Or like a weekly meeting that adds no value. Why do you have it? Get rid of it, or don't go to it. I think people need to take a little bit more ownership in what they spend their time on and really evaluate it. I was on a course recently where they provided a not to-do list. So what are the things that you can eliminate, delegate, or it was a word that ended 8, and it's basically putting a process around it. So, how can you put a process around something, or get rid of it completely, or have someone else help you with that task? And I think it's an exercise we should go through often.
I think that's brilliant. I love that idea. I've never a not to-do list. I wonder how
A not to-do list.
That's what I think is so powerful. What you're talking about here. Okay, if people do feel under time pressure in their mind, taking accountability and challenging and pushing back or saying no, I found one of the biggest time gains for me has been the ability to say no to stuff that doesn't serve me or doesn't add value. But again, it takes courage. Yeah?
What kills me is managers will go to these meetings where they just sit there and have no input, have no involvement, but they'll go to like 10 meetings in a day, 6 meetings in a day, yet they will cancel their team one-on-one meetings. They'll cancel their one-on-one meetings with their own team so they can go to some whatever meeting that they feel like they need to go to. I'm like, okay, no, make your one-on-ones a priority. They will add so much value to your life, and then figure out what other meetings you can cancel. So again, it comes down to, what are you prioritizing?
I love that. And there's this really strong theme from our conversation today around
Mm.
accountability and ownership,
Mm.
but also empowerment. Yeah. So these middle managers, they've got to be accountable, but also to be confident as well and to
Right.
challenge. So it is quite a tough
Absolutely.
one, isn't it? It is a tough
It
one.
is. It's a delicate balance. And sometimes it's, the balance is to fly under the radar while you get your team up and running and doing what you want, or sometimes the balance is, knowing when to have the courage and speak up and say that you don't think that's the right direction, or the courage to tell a boss who's normally closed down that you've got an excellent idea that you really feel like should be shared with everyone. It's worked for you. And sometimes people just keep it to themselves because they feel like it's going to be shot down. So courage is not always about fighting a negative situation. It's also having the courage to say, hey, I've got something that works. Why don't we see if it works for everybody else? but it is that balance of kind of focusing on your own team and then also being accountable upwards as well. And, you know, what does that mean? You know, this week it might mean you got to manage that person. The next week it might mean that you've got to swallow your pride a bit. It just kind of, you know, whatever's coming around, you just got to learn that patience.
God, amazing.
Yeah.
Well, look, as we look to wrap up, how can people get hold of you, Renata, if they want to follow on the conversation or they want to sort of reach out to you to connect with you? What's the best way to find you?
Well, I think I'm on Facebook, you know, Renata Porter Leads, and I've got my website at renataporter.com, or they could just email me, rp@renataporter.com. I was doing a lot of, you know, one of my not to-do list, I was trying to make sure that, you know, because my goal is to, you know, get information out there. And if it works for one or two people, awesome. I feel like I've done something. So I was writing every week, doing videos every week. I was pushing out information. And then I just found that I was just kind of getting lost in actually doing some quality things for some clients and for myself. So I've kind of slowed down on my social media activity. But you can also find me on LinkedIn as well as Renata Porter.
Awesome. Well, look, thank you so much for having a conversation around a topic that we don't normally talk about in this podcast.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
appreciate your
great.
time.
Oh, thank you, Gary. I've had a good time. Thank you very much.
Yes. Have a great day. Bye. Cheers.
Okay. Bye.